Hi everybody, Chuck here with Jenkins Boat Works. We're still working on the Haven today, and boy, what a milestone today is. We got the Centerboard installed into the trunk. Well, it's not installed, it's fitted. I'm still going to have to drill a hole through it so that we can put the pin through it, and I'm going to need to do some epoxy work on it. This has been pretty much an all-weekend task because when we first fitted in there yesterday, I was trying to cram it up in the slot with a hammer. Obviously, that's not not how it's supposed to work. But anyway, this video will concentrate mostly on that. There's a few other little clips of some other little things that we've been doing. But anyway, super excited to get to this point. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you're coming back for the 118th episode, we're glad you're here. So anyway, let's jump in and see how we get this thing fitted. Okay, now this is the nut that goes on the end of my 6-inch bolt. And I've got to countersink this 5/8 hole that we've got in the lead ballast to allow that nut to set in there flush. And the nut's about just shy of 1 inch at its thickest. So I've got a spade bit and 1-inch spade bit. We're going to come right up to the center here. And I've got a dowel rod in there so that I got something for the point of this thing to grab onto, and then we'll just drill out enough for this nut to sit in there. So I don't know how deep I need to go. It's probably maybe 3/4 of an inch. Okay, this shouldn't be too difficult, really. Pretty much right in the middle. Kind of slow going, but it's working. So we got this drilled out. I went to a 1 1/16. This gives it just a little bit of play in there, but should be good.
Okay, so this is the centerboard, and we're gonna put it into the centerboard truck right in there. And there's a hole through here, and we need to make a hole through this. So when we lift it up through it, we'll make, this is the estimate of where the hole will be. We'll make a hole through wherever it needs to be. So right there is about where it should
Good.
be.
Okay, and so then we got to try to lift the boat up enough to get that back part of the centerboard in there. All right?
Yeah.
And how are we lifting the boat up?
So we have, we pull these chains, and then it lifts the boat up.
So we got 2 gantries with chain hoists. And we can see how much we've already lifted it up. So we're getting really close. It's a little scary because it's very dangerous, but we're doing great.
Yeah, and I'm gonna grab the 2 pieces of wood that are tied to that piece of string and slowly lift it back up.
Yes, those little blocks of wood are up on top of the centerboard trunk waiting for us. Okay. Okay, so we've got the centerboard in the slot, and we've lowered the boat back down to where it's back on the cribbing, and on the jack stands, so we feel like we're very secure. We still have just the teeniest bit of tension in the gantry as a backup. Serenity's in the boat, and she is going to start winding these ropes up so that we lift the centerboard up into the slot. And I'm going to help push it up from the bottom.
I'm just going to get any extra rope.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, and then I'll actually start pulling it.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, well, it's going to get pretty heavy here in a second.
Yeah, because
All
it's
right.
full of lead.
Okay, we're going to turn the camera off and then we'll do it. So what do you suppose we're looking at here? After fighting with it for almost 2 days, the centerboard is in the trunk. So, been working on the hole that you see here for the bronze pin to go through. But now, or at least dry fitting it, putting the board in, and so all that's is holding it up. Now you can see in there that the board is in the trunk. So I'm super happy. I had to plane down part of the board because it was hanging up in there. And then many of you may remember that when we did the first sea trial, the only sea trial, we had some leaks going on, and I have since used a fair amount of epoxy to seal up the dead wood, the lead, the 4-foot, everything. And then I spent some time on my back laying down underneath here and putting epoxy up in the slot. Some of the epoxy that I put in there I didn't have it thick enough, and so it kind of sagged and dripped inside there to a point where it started making the slot narrower. So I couldn't exactly figure out how I was going to get the globs of epoxy off the inside, and I ended up coming up with a rather ingenious idea. The drill is still here. So I had to make a tool that I could use to sand inside the slot and get the globs of epoxy off. I had a piece of this 1-inch oak dowel, and and then I had some threaded rod. So what I did is I drilled a hole in the, a little section of the dowel, and then used a lock washer and one of those neoprene locking nuts. And this was all a lot of trial and error. I have another one of these that I cut off too short, so I had to make another one. And then I got some belt sandpaper. Quite honestly, I bought the wrong size. My belt sander takes 18s, and this I think was a 21. So I cut off a piece of that, and I tried gluing it to the dowel, and that didn't really work very good. I ended up taking and used my staple gun and stapled these on here. So it's been a lot of trial and error with this, but it actually worked really well. So once I got the sandpaper secured on there and was able to, I don't have the chuck for this thing. This drill's ancient. But it kept wanting to slip out of there. But finally got to a point where we were able to sand it down good. And then the other thing we did, I spent most of the day planing the centerboard and thinning it down just a little bit. It moves in there beautifully. Now, the next thing is to make sure that it's where we want it in there, and then drill the 5/8 hole. I don't think I'm going to drill 5/8. I think I'm going to go much smaller than that, because I'm thinking to over drill the hole. Like I've got a 1/16 spade bit I think I may use. Drill a much bigger hole in it, fill the whole thing full of epoxy, and then drill it back to 5/8. Somebody's also suggested getting a bushing, like some sort of plastic or other bushing that could go in the centerboard, so that it doesn't wear. But I don't want water getting inside the marine plywood. It is marine plywood, but I don't want that to happen. I don't want it to swell. I want it to be able to swing freely on that pin. So anyway, big day. So excited to be able to get the centerboard in there. Been working on the tiller and the rudder, just all kinds of little jobs. We sanded the seats down, and pretty much everything's ready for varnish. So more progress. We're getting there. So this little hook deal, bronze hook, fits on the back side of the stem, up there in between the bow chocks and behind the forestay bracket. Jim Reinick made this for me, and he marked on here, that line at the top is at the top of the stem, and then he marked on there what size screws this takes. So it's a number 12 in the top hole and a 10 behind that. So basically then, and I already measured this, and we're just almost a perfect distance. If I just rest that right up there, that line on the back of there is just right here on the top of the stem. So it's just right. So really all I got to do is just drill 2 holes, put a number 12 in there, a number 10 down there, and then the forestay, of course, attaches on this chain plate, and then the jib the tack should go on this hook. Quite the assortment of boat jewelry.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.